The Chicken Asylum, an Alex Reynolds mystery. Author, Fred Hunter. Publisher, St. Martin's, Griffin, New York. Narrator, Eric Aust. Chapter 14. Fredericks insisted on debriefing us, but he didn't get to it until the next day, because he and his men were busy rounding up everyone, even remotely connected with the House of Persia. The delay was a good thing, because Mother didn't get home until very late that night, and knowing Fredericks, her absence would have been suspect. True to his word, James had gone straight to Stevie's apartment. "Honestly, Alex, every time he goes out with you, he comes back alone," Mother said as she collapsed onto the couch. "When I saw you weren't there, I thought there'd been another shootout. Imagine my surprise when he told me what actually happened." "He did tell you I was all right, didn't he?" "Yes, but I fancy I would have known if you weren't anyway. You should have seen the reunion between those two." "Stevie and James?" "Yes, you would have thought they were long-lost lovers." She sniffed weirdly. "Maybe they are." "He was trying to protect us," I said. "James, I mean. He was afraid the Red Jihad would somehow track us down and kill us. And Stevie, he didn't want this to happen. But you knew that, didn't you?" She nodded. "I thought that might be the case. You told me after he disappeared that Stevie said he talked about how much we'd done for him." "I should have seen it myself when we were dressing him up. He kept telling me how dangerous it was to help him and what a risk we were taking. I still don't know how the Red Jihad could have found out about us if he just stayed put." "Yeah, but he knew them," said Peter. "And he was terrified of them. He probably really believed they would find us somehow. Instead of that, he led them right to us." Peter smiled at me indulgently. "Excuse me, honey, but we were the ones that went to them." I laughed lightly. "For all the best reasons." Where is he now?" Peter asked Mother. "Stevie has agreed to take him out of town." She turned to me. "By the way, darling, you'll be glad to know that Janet Lee still could do it today." "You bought them a car?" I said. "I used one. It wasn't very expensive, but it should get them where they're going." "And where's that?" She smiled. "They're still going through the wreckage," said Fredericks, slewing his narrowed eyes back and forth between us with the subtlety of Jennifer Jones in Duel in the Sun. "They still haven't found any remnants of your friend James." "Would they?" I asked innocently. "He was tied up awfully close to the bombs." "They should find something. Are you sure he didn't get out?" I affected an impatient huff. "I barely got out myself. He didn't come out the way I did. The lobby doors were locked and a chain. And you were watching the front door. I'd say it's pretty clear he went over the rainbow." "Move on," said Nelson. The five of us, Mother, Peter, Nelson, Fredericks, and I, were gathered around our dining table. My family members sat with hands neatly folded on the table like angelic schoolchildren. Nelson leaned rather casually against the back of his chair with pen and notebook propped on his knee. Occasionally he jotted something down, but at such irregular intervals that I could have sworn he wasn't making a grocery list. Frederick sat at the head of the table, his shoulders tensed, leaning forward with an expression that was both grim and helpless, as if he knew he'd lost control, but still wanted us to know he was in charge. I gave him a fairly detailed account of the call from James and how I'd ended up with the bomb at the Merc, stressing, of course, James's innocence, but he wasn't interested in that, as he wasn't trying to get us to explain how we'd found the house full of explosives on Kessler. We still couldn't own up to that one for fear of persecution, so We held to our story that we just happened on it. You expect me to believe that? Frederick said when we refused to budge. What the hell would you two be doing in that deserted area? Cruising, I said. You know how it is when you cruise, don't you, Bob? His face flushed. Keep making jokes, buddy. Do you have any idea of the damage you've done? We've done? I said angrily, rising from my chair. This whole mess was caused by your people. The reason the Red Jihad tried to kill James was because the agent you sent to tail Yusuf al-Ansari was so goddamn inept, he was spotted the very first night. If you'd been up front with James in the first place about what you wanted from him, none of this would have happened. He wouldn't have told us, Frederick insisted. I sat down slowly, never taking my eyes off his. I think he would have. Mother and Peter looked at me. They looked proud. And if he would have, I continued, maybe you could have protected him properly. For Christ's sake, Fredericks, if he'd known what you wanted, he could have just given you his cousin's phone number. He wouldn't have had to call it and put himself in jeopardy. But you people have to do everything in your goddamn underhanded, convoluted way. We didn't even know he had a phone number for him. Did you ever think of asking him? Said Peter. And we weren't just after his cousin. We wanted to know everyone he contacted. And we didn't know whether or not he was a member of the Jihad himself. We fell into a silent stalemate that wasn't ended until Nelson said diplomatically, well, at least we have al-Ansari's phone records, and I know everyone he has been in contact with. We should be able to track down the rest of the Jihad. That's good, said Mother. It was not long after that Nelson called an end to the questioning, leaving Fredericks dissatisfied, but apparently resigned to the fact that he wasn't going to get any more from us. As we walked the agents to the door, I said, hey, Fredericks, I have a question for you. He stopped. What? You had someone tailing us, and then you stopped. I mean, we were being followed when we didn't need you, and then when we actually needed you guys, you weren't there. What happened? He flashed a superior smile. We were following you to find where you stashed James. As soon as we knew that, we didn't have any reason to keep a tail on you. I don't have unlimited manpower, you know. What do you mean, as soon as you knew that? I asked incredulously. We've been following your friend Stevie ever since he left that store your friend here works at. You were tapping our phones? I was not only indignant, I was thoroughly confused. Mother had assured us that Stevie had gotten James out of town. I had a horrible feeling that the whole debriefing we'd just undergone had been a sham, much like the one they performed with James. If you thought Stevie and James, why didn't you pick him up? We couldn't just storm into his apartment. We were keeping him under the surveillance, waiting for him to make his move. Since we knew your friend had him, we put most of our resources there to make sure he didn't get away. You did, I said, more perplexed than ever. And until we're absolutely positive that James died in that explosion, we're going to keep Stevie under surveillance. You are, I said after a beat. That's right, he smiled smugly. You thought you were pretty smart using a code name. We did. I looked at Mother and Peter, who appeared to be as lost as I was. But within 30 minutes of his leaving the clothing store, we had his real name. You did? Yes, he said triumphantly. Tony Davis. Oh, I suddenly felt so giddy my legs went rubbery. Oh, well, you really are too quick for us. We're not total fools, you know, he said as he went out the door. Nelson paused in the doorway and faced us. Jean, Peter, Alex. Good work. Nelson, would you tell me something straight out without any of the way you are? What is it? Do you really think that James is a member of the Red Jihad? There was a slight pause. You mean, did I? My cheeks grew hot. Yes, that's what I mean. He looked me in the eye. No, I didn't. In fact, if he were still alive, I would do everything in my power to help him. But would it be wise for him to seek that help? I asked hesitantly. Who could say? With this, he left. I closed the door after him, then leaned my back against it, put my hand to my chest, and started to laugh with relief. Who bloody hell is Tony Davis? Mother asked. The guy that tried to pick me up at Frot's, I said breathlessly. They must have seen him talking to me and thought he was our contact. Peter gathered me up in his arms. Thank God you're irresistible. Oh, shut up, I said as we kissed. I wasn't surprised that Mother had been able to talk Stevie into taking James out of town, but I was surprised that he didn't come back. Peter said I shouldn't have been, because we'd experienced love at first sight ourselves. And then again, Stevie and James had a long drive during which I'm sure they got to know each other better. The minute they reached their destination, they found an apartment and settled in together, where they've been living ever since, and we're the only ones who knows where they went, with the possible exception of Oscar Wilde. Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold: to offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides, and in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.